83.2% of every player to have ever played in the NBA went through college to get there. Of course, the rest either came from overseas, the D-League, or straight out of high school, but considering 83% is such a high percentage, it makes it interesting to look at the best all-time starting fives from every college. But there's only so many colleges, so a lot of players throughout league history have gone to the same ones. Some schools are way more popular than others, but it's still interesting. Oh, and also we're basing things off of how good these guys were in their primes. But before we do, I want to give a quick shout out to 5's, who's back today to sponsor another video. We all know someone dealing with male pattern baldness. It could be a family member, a coworker, or even you. No one willingly just chooses to go bald one day, and instead they didn't, and they really could have used 5's, because 5's is a subscription service that makes it easier and more affordable for men to treat their baldness. 2 out of 3 guys will experience some form of male pattern baldness by the time they're 35, and with 5's, prevention is key. You want to get started before you already lose all your hair, so catch it before it's too late and act now to save the hair you still have. The sooner you use 5's, the more hair you save, and the best part is 5's will have a licensed doctor review your information and recommend which plan's right for you. Then your treatment's shipped right to your door every 3 months, and from there you can message your doctor 24/7 for any questions or concerns. So if you're ready to take action and prevent hair loss, go to keeps.com/sweat or click the link in the description to receive 50% off your first order. That's keeps.com/sweat. Shout out to them for the sponsor. Now into the video. Now first, I want to give the starting 5 made up of NBA players that came straight out of high school, and honestly this might be way better than any college, with LeBron James, Kobe Bryant, Tracy McGrady, Kevin Garnett, and Moses Malone. There's a reason all these guys were taken out of high school and never even had to go to college, because they were NBA ready at 17 and more than lived up to all the hype they had at even that age. There were more guys that came in and skipped college, but they weren't good enough to take any of these spots. And as a unit, we're talking one of the best teams of all time. LeBron and Kobe are 2 GOATs already, T-Mac's the go-to scorer, and Garnett and Moses are a weird matchup in the front court, but it'd be better than any we've ever seen. As for colleges though, our 10th best goes to Florida for Jason Williams, Bradley Beal, Mike Miller, Al Horford, and Joakim Noah. They don't rank here for having any major superstars, but for having a lineup complete and full of all-star level players. Beal would definitely be the go-to star of this team and the closest thing they had to a superstar. Defense for them would lack in the backcourt, but more than be made up for in the front court, with 2 dominant big men on that end. I like Williams running point guard, Beal being the star, and Miller being the shooter. Overall, it's a really solid starting 5 by any standard. Number 9 then goes to Texas. They don't have a ton of talent, and they were lacking in some categories, but their 5 is DJ Augustine, Avery Bradley, Kevin Durant, LaMarcus Aldridge, and Miles Turner. And the fact that they have a major superstar in Kevin is what carried them here. It's also a very good team on both ends, with Miles Turner, Avery Bradley, and even Durant going both ways. Texas isn't a super popular school, but as you can see throughout the years, and more so in the past decade or two, they've had some big successes. Even with Kevin leading the way, and if a guy like LaMarcus Aldridge was in his prime here, it wouldn't be a fantastic team considering the rest of the lineup. They'd be decent in today's league, but not much more than a playoff team, and considering these are going to be some all-time great lineups, no doubt they only made it for number 9. Now for number 8, we have Duke. This may be surprising for you to have one of the most popular schools only at 8, but for the 5 we have Kyrie Irving, JJ Redick, Grant Hill, Jason Tatum, and Zion Williamson. Brandon Ingram, Seth Curry, Carlos Boozer, along with many others, also went to Duke, but given each player's position, this is the lineup we came up with. They're not bad, but they're extremely undersized and lacking on defense. Jason and Zion are young, undersized forwards, so that gives them no big man and no primary rebounder. And for how well Duke's known for being a basketball school, it's pretty weird that 4 out of the 5 of these guys have played in the NBA within the last year. Overall though, it's an outstanding offensive team. Kyrie's running things, JJ's the shooter, Grant Hill and Jason Tatum doing it all as the stars, and Zion controlling the post down low. And it's why they're one of my favorite lineups of the video, even though they do have some flaws. Number 7 is a weird one with Wake Forest, who have Chris Paul, Jeff Teague, James Johnson, John Collins, and Tim Duncan. And as you can tell, they are carried to the spot by the duo of Chris and Tim. That's really all they need though, considering how dominant Paul would be with the best power forward of all time. We saw how deep Chris made it in the postseason with Blake Griffin, so imagine the championships Chris and Duncan would have brought to wherever they played. And on top of that, John Collins is a great third option to have, especially with CP3 as point guard, because if there was anyone in the league who'd do a better job of finding him for open looks while he's running to the rim than Trae Young has, it would be Chris Paul. And Collins would be in the Blake Griffin role, but I think he'd actually play it a lot better. Jeff Teague was just thrown in here because he was the best option, and same for James Johnson, but at least he could serve as the enforcer of this lineup, and he's not a terrible role player anyways. Overall though, Wake Forest isn't a very popular school, so it's impressive their 5's good enough to rank in at 7. Coming in at the 6th spot, it goes to Michigan State. And to find the best starting 5 for this lineup, we have a lot of older players in Magic Johnson, Steve Smith, Jason Richardson, Draymond Green, and Kevin Willis. And this one's not bad. Magic and Draymond would pair well together, but aside from them, Smith, Richardson, and Willis only have 2 all-star appearances between the 3 of them. It still works though, because in their primes they were all around 20 point per game scorers, so they're all more than capable of scoring and winning a game. Plus they have Magic and even Draymond to facilitate everything else. These three can score, and Green can just be the team's lockdown defender, so he wouldn't have to worry about putting up any points. Then for number 5, we have a very unique lineup composed of players from all different decades, and it goes to LSU for Mahmoud Abdul-Rauf, Pete Maravich, Ben Simmons at small forward, Bob Pettit, and Shaq. So shooting's limited for both Simmons and Shaq, but I don't think that's much of an issue because everyone else on the team can shoot extremely well, and Simmons would mainly just be used for defense anyways. Pete Maravich was a scorer unlike anyone else of his time. He was just always on a bad team, so this would give him the opportunity to actually put his skill set to the test. Shaq would be Shaq, and Bob Pettit would fit perfectly with him. He dominated in his day and had the ability to stretch the floor while also averaging 20 rebounds a night. Overall, this team's really got everything. There'd be a weird dynamic to it, but they've got it all. Things are heating up though as we get inside the actual top 5 with number 4, and it might be a team you wouldn't have guessed, but Kansas actually takes it. For JoJo White, Andrew Wiggins, Paul Pierce, Marcus Morris, and Wilt Chamberlain. They've quietly had a lot of great NBA players, not even to mention Joel Embiid went to Kansas too, but of course doesn't take Wilt Chamberlain's spot. This team's set though. JoJo White was a 7-time All-Star in the 70s and a 20 point per game scorer. Andrew Wiggins is the perfect two-way player this team needed. Paul Pierce would probably be the leader in terms of controlling the ball. Morris would take the role as a stretch defensive 4, and then Wilt Chamberlain would be the superstar of this team and dominate. We got 3 more recent players and 2 older players, but I feel like the styles would all blend very well. It's a perfect blend here of guys that would take control and guys that would step back and be the 3rd or 4th option. Definitely a championship squad and definitely the best 5 so far. Now for number 3, we get into the most popular schools that you'd probably expect, and these were all oddly current day players from Kentucky, with John Wall, Devin Booker, Julius Randle, Anthony Davis, and DeMarcus Cousins. And like I said, if we're talking everyone in their primes, we saw AD and Cousins play together, and they were dominant in the front court. They just didn't really have much surrounding them, but now they would. With how well Randle's developed, at least in the regular season, he'd be a great compliment. It'd be weird to have him at small forward, but he was the best player and the best fit to put in this lineup from Kentucky. It would already make this lineup a little slow having him there, but they'd compromise that and would instead have a lot of size. As for the backcourt though, Booker's an elite scorer and Wall's a good facilitator, being a 20 and 10 guy. And Davis and Cousins have chemistry already, and Wall and Cousins already have chemistry, so there's a good thing going here. And these guys are all former All-Stars. In their primes, this looks like an All-Star team's starting 5 as opposed to a college's best starting lineup. Now for number 2, North Carolina's always been one of the best basketball schools in the nation, and it's why they've brought us Kenny Smith, Michael Jordan, Vince Carter, Anton Jameson, and Bob McAdoo. And the key to this one is of course Michael Jordan. We know the team MJ played with on the Bulls. Well, this thing brings him a few things he's never had. He had a point guard around Kenny Smith's level, but never another scorer playing alongside him like Vince Carter, and nowhere near another center that could play at Bob McAdoo's level. McAdoo played in the 70s and 80s, but the man was averaging 35 and 15 in his prime, so it's hard to imagine just how good him and MJ would have actually been together. Plus, Jordan never really played with a stretch 4 like Jameson. He never had the half-court offense spread out so far because the game was just played different back then. So there's a lot of unknowns here with this team, but I have no doubt this is a good ranking for them. Then finally for number 1, now I almost put North Carolina at 1, but I couldn't with the amount of talent that UCLA has, because they have Russell Westbrook, Zach LaVine, Reggie Miller, Kevin Love, and Kareem. Based on where the careers are at right now, I would definitely have put Drew Holiday over Russ for point guards, but since we're doing it in their primes, the former MVP has to take it. And because he does, we have a great team, a little lacking on defense with Kareem and Russ being the only solid defensive guys, but on offense, they'd be unstoppable. On most teams, just having one guy like Zach LaVine would be enough in terms of scoring, but then you had Reggie, who you can always give the ball to in the clutch, Kevin, who used to be great, Russ, who averaged 30, and Kareem, who once averaged 35 points a game. And there's no doubt that these guys are the most well-rounded team out there and have a perfect blend of inside-out scoring. Now to end things off, I wanted to give a little bonus. We looked at the all-time high school team at the beginning. Well, as for the all-time international team, in terms of players that came straight to the NBA from overseas, this one doesn't really count for the video, it's more of an honorable mention, and I just wanted to throw it out there that their 5 would have been Luka Doncic, Manu Ginobili, Peja Stojakovic, Giannis, and Nikola Jokic, easily making this one of the better teams of the entire video. And they have 3 current day players, which is impressive. Things might be controversial here considering putting Giannis over Dirk and Jokic over Yao Ming, but obviously the veterans played longer, so they may have had better overall careers, but the young guys have had higher peaks already, and that's kind of what we based it off of. So controversial or not, this is what I'm sticking with. Many people have Dirk as the greatest international player of all time, but who knows, one day one of these guys has a good chance to pass him. And that's gonna wrap things up. Comment down below your favorite starting 5, and I'm out.